What's good, everyone? It's your boy Salos back in another Monster Hunter Wilds information roundup, I guess, video. And let me tell you something about this, okay? I didn't see myself really committing to covering news and information on Wilds, but you guys seem to really like all the topics that I've done up to this point. So I figured I might as well just go ahead and commit to it. But this one is going to be especially special because the way that I do things for Monster Hunter, the way that I like to enjoy it, is that I'm still relatively new to the Monster Hunter franchise. My quote-unquote first game was Monster Hunter Rise, and I say quote-unquote because it technically was Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, but as the ye old saying goes, your first Monster Hunter game is never your first Monster Hunter game. You always pick one up, hate it, drop it, come back 6 years later, and then you fall in love with it. Not always the case. I have friends who it was love at first sight, but for a vast majority of like content creators, people that I know online, that was their story with the series. So, being that I am relatively a new hunter, I have a lot of weapons to enjoy. So, ultimately, my goal is that I want to be the king of all hunters and know all 14 weapons and be able to use them to their fullest abilities, but we're not there just yet. In Rise, my dual blades was my calling card, which I do consider my main weapon. I do consider myself a dual blades main. So that was fun to discuss. Rise was more of my discovery because I used pretty much every weapon in Rise Break. So that was just to discover who my main weapon was. And in World and Iceborne, I did a challenge that I would use nothing but the charge blade. I didn't even touch dual blades until the Iceborne expansion. So it was really fun going in with the charge blade and learning how the nuances and all the intricacies and all the mechanisms of the weapon. It was a lot of fun. But this time, I have a few weapons in mind that I think that I might be trying out, but I'm not really so set in stone like, yes, this is the weapon that I'm going to be using for Wilds. So I'm pretty sure you guys have seen content creators all throughout the week talk about every weapon and all the new moves and returning moves, returning monsters. I'm not knowledgeable enough to really do that. So these are just my raw first impressions on seeing these from like a minute of gameplay. And like I said, I do have a couple weapons that I had my eye on before this whole weapon showcase came out, but these are just my rankings, and this is more so for me to help me know what weapon I want to pick. But along the way, you guys get to see all 14 weapons, and if you guys have missed any weapon or you didn't know Capcom was doing this, there is a playlist in the description below that I made that you guys can go and check out and look at all 14 weapons for yourself. But there's a lot to go through here because Capcom, I feel like they've done a very good job. You will see that there are not too many weapons in like the lower tiers because I am going to be doing this in a tier list format. And let me just say this right now. If your weapon is at the bottom of the list, that does not mean that I hate your weapon. All that means is that it's not for me. We all have different play styles. We all like to play a little bit differently, and what I value is different from what you value. So just because you see your weapon in D, it doesn't mean your weapon sucks. It doesn't mean that it got robbed or whatever. All it means is that it does not fit my personal play style. Because at the end of the day, this is my opinion. I don't know why we have to say this. When you hear someone on the internet talking about what they see, that is their opinion. So this is my opinion on the weapons. And if yours are different, then by all means, make a reply to this video make your own tier list and tag me, and I'd love to see your own discussions on these things. So with all that being said, let's not just waste any more of you guys' time. Let's get into discussion now, shall we? Now, coming in at the bottom is the Greatsword. Now, one thing about me that you should probably know is that, and you'll see this as I go through the rankings, that for me, the best defense is a good offense. I love to be aggressive. I love to be up in the monster's grill. I love to be and just not in Monster Hunter, just in general in gaming. I'm a very offensive person. I just love the action. I guess you could say I'm very DPS focused. So that is kind of what deters me from the Greatsword. And for me, I feel like they would have to do something so severe to the greatsword to get me to enjoy it, because it's very slow, and I understand that it's more of just reading the monster's movements, and not everything has to be a true charge slash like people would like you to believe. I understand greatsword is more than just true charge slashing. You have blocks. Monster Hunter Sunbreak gave the weapon a counter, so there are a lot of good things with the greatsword. And it may take you 5 million years to get the weapon, to get the move out, but when you do get your move out, man, do you do damage. And has proven that it's a very powerful weapon, but it just contrasts with my own personal playstyle, that I love to be fast and aggressive and I value mobility. That's also even with the charge blade when I was using it in Iceborne, that I never used the Savage Axe style, because with the charge blade, when you're in the sword and shield mode, you have a little cha-cha slide where you can slide around the monster. You're very mobile, and when you charge your sword, you can do pretty much, you can do decent damage while having your sword charged. But by far, the most valuable aspect of the weapon and the most damaging part of the weapon is the Savage Axe playstyle. So even with the charge blade, the weapon that I just sought out to learn, I never used its most quote-unquote optimal route because it was just too slow for my own personal playstyle. So it has nothing to do with what was showcased here. It's just more of that I don't think that there's anything that Capcom can do to the weapon to make me interested in it without stripping it of its identity. Which wouldn't be fair, because greatsword has a very loyal fan base. It's one of the original weapons. It's the poster child weapon, if you ask me, because it's on all the box arts of all the games. So I don't know. That's why it's down here at the bottom, because it's just a slow weapon. And slower weapons, we'll get into slower weapons. But in terms of this one, it's just not for me. Moving up to C tier, I have the good old Sword Board. The starting weapon that either one or two things happen when you pick the sword and shield. Either you love the versatility and you love the mobility and you love the fact you can use items with your weapon still unsheathed and you just enjoy the comfort of the weapon, or you just didn't know that there are 13 other weapons you could have chosen at the start of the game. Either way it goes. The sword and shield, I feel like, is a very beginner-focused weapon, and it does a good job of having good mobility, doing good damage, doing solid damage at that. But for me, I feel like the weapon kind of plateaus off a little bit. I know that's not really so true per se, because there is a lot to the weapon. There is a lot of room for growth. It's very much a weapon that's easy to pick up, but difficult to master. So I don't want to sell the sword and shield short, but also there is a weapon that I used in Iceborne in World that the developer outright said they made the weapon to be a better sword and shield. So I'm not sure what game I'm gonna play is gonna take the L on the sword and shield, but yeah, just if you didn't catch on, it's Charge Blade. The developers did go on record saying that they want to make sword and shield again, but good. So it's gonna be hard going backwards. One of these games is going to take the L. I will learn Sword and Shield one day, but for a brand new adventure, I wanted to see a little bit more for the Sword and Shield. And for me, there just wasn't enough new here. And if there is anything new here, again, I apologize. But maybe some of the oil systems back from Generations, maybe Generations might be the game might take the hit for Sword and Board. But I don't know. It just didn't really vibe with me. To me, it didn't leave a lasting impression. And again, these are subject to change, so just because it didn't appeal to me right now, again, this is only like 1 minute of gameplay we're looking at, so who knows, maybe that the oils are back. We don't know that the oil isn't back, it just wasn't shown off. So based on what we've seen right now, it seems like good old reliable sword and shield to me, and yeah, it just didn't really, there wasn't really anything that spoke to me or called out to me. But unfortunately, that these two weapons are the weapons that are the ones that I didn't really enjoy the most watching, that I just, because these did come out at 4 o'clock in the morning for me. These are the weapons that I kind of looked at my phone at, said, oh, that's cool, and went right back to sleep. So I think after this, things will get a little bit more interesting. But for the time being, these are the weapons that I probably will not be playing to any capacity in Wild, unless something major gets revealed. Oh boy, here we go. Capcom's favorite weapon. I feel like there's no question in my mind that this is Capcom's favorite weapon. It seems that every game, the longsword just continues to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And man, did they do some things to this weapon. Longsword users, look at all the new ways you can flinch your friends. You have a new mode in the red mode. You guys get basically a whole new moveset. So you have a whole plethora of options to screw over your friends. Okay, let me stop. No, for real though. The longsword is looking kind of crisp, okay? That's why it's not all the way down in C tier. And let me just say that there is one thing specifically that saved this thing from being in C tier. Because if you guys don't know, I actually did start my World and Iceborne playthrough with the longsword. And somewhere along the way, I dropped longsword to pick up Charge Blade. And the thing that was, is that to me, it felt very, I don't want to say spammy, because it's not. It's a very counter heavy weapon. And I think that's the one thing that I've heard very consistently, is that if you're not countering with a longsword, you're not really using it to your fullest potential. Or if you're not countering with longsword, then maybe you should just pick up another weapon that's not so counter focused. This time it seems like it's more of a balance, because now it seems less of just spamming roundhouse slash to get your red gauge, and then when you're in your red gauge, just countering and spamming helm breakers. I feel like that's what the longsword basically boiled down to, but now it looks like it's more like the counters are an option to just counter, but when you get to your red gauge, an entirely new moveset opens up to you, and that's what has me very interested in the longsword, because I'm not the best counter person. If you look at me in any fighting game, that I am not good at counters. I'm not good at landing them. But I have been playing a lot of Zenless Zone Zero lately, and it's an action RPG made by Hoyoverse, and I know that Hoyo games have a reputation, but I can say that that playing ZZZ has helped me with my counters and executing them more effectively. So combine that with the fact that the longsword seems to have an entirely new moveset when you're in your red spirit gauge. I don't know. The longsword is looking kind of nice, and it meshed with my playstyle too, because I already told you that the best defense is a good offense for me, and longsword is the epitome of offense. If you like offense and you like balls to the walls, like I said, I think this is Capcom's favorite weapon, so you'll probably be showered in buffs with the longsword. But all that being said, it is all the way down here because I have tried this weapon multiple times in multiple different games, and it has never meshed well with me. So that's why it's all the way down here at the bottom of B tier, but it is in B tier because I think there is a real chance I'll pick up the longsword. If not for my main weapon, I'm pretty sure I might just try it on the side, or maybe I might try it for a couple of episodes when my Wilds playthrough comes out, but this is the weapon that I have my eye on. Now, you guys have been hearing me talk about it and yap it off. You might be surprised to see Charge Blade all the way down here, considering how much of it I've talked about it up until this point. But here's the thing. Like I said, new weapon. The Charge Blade is not my main. Dual blades are my main. So I don't want to say that it's disqualified, but I've already had my fun with the Charge Blade. And let me just say, Charge Blade I'm going to use Charge Blade in this game, okay? It's not a matter of if I'm going to use Charge Blade, it's a matter of when I'm going to use Charge Blade. Because now that we can have two weapons on our hunters at all times, at least I think that's what they announced at some point, but it's more of, am I going to use dual blades or am I going to use Charge Blade as my secondary weapon? That's the question that I'm battling with. It's not a question of if, it's a matter of when. And I'll just use this time to just go ahead and talk about the Charge Blade because this is actually a weapon I can talk quite extensively about. It looks to me that they're taking the best of both worlds with Rise and Sunbreak and Iceborne. And let me tell you what my biggest problem with Charge Blade and Rise and Sunbreak was. And this isn't a Charge Blade exclusive issue. I feel like every weapon to a certain extent was affected by this, but it especially is true for Charge Blade that they stripped it of its complexity. In World and Iceborne, in World and Iceborne, I very much appreciated the fact that if I wanted to, that I could use the Savage Axe playstyle. Or mid-hunt, it's like, oh crap, I'm getting the snot beat out of me. Let me go ahead and switch to my Sword and Shield playstyle. And I can just go into and just charge my sword and charge my shield and just play as Sword and Shield. And if I wanted to go into that Savage Axe playstyle, that I could swap on the fly. In Rise and Sunbreak, it felt like they stripped you of that complexity. It felt like you were either shoehorned into spamming super amped element discharges, or as the community calls it, the pizza cutter of doom. Or is that what I call it? I forgot at this point. But yeah, that's what it kind of feels like it was in Rise and Sunbreak. It really felt like, how many pizza cutters can you land in one hunt? And that and the pizza cutter is very flashy, is very cinematic, but at the end of the day, that's not a movie you want to be spamming and throwing out all the time. So the fact that Rise and Sunbreak really leaned into that is not really going up my alley. The thing that I did like about Rise and Sunbreak's iteration of the Charge Blade is that you didn't need files to go into the Savage Axe playstyle. You could just do it with your switch skills. And I feel like the axe portion is a very underutilized aspect of the weapon. The Savage Axe playstyle was, I feel like, their soft answer to using the axe portion of it more. But honestly, people use it kind of like a Sword and Shield. It's also why I said why Sword and Shield is so low. Why would I ever use Sword and Shield when the Charge Blade is right there? So don't answer that in the comment section. I know why you'd use Sword and Shield over Charge Blade. But that's kind of where I'm at with the weapon, is that if it looks like they're leaning more into the actual axe portion of it. And if the axe portion of it just goes into the Savage Axe playstyle, I feel like that will do so much for the weapon. If you don't have to maintain files to go into your Savage Axe playstyle, man, I feel like that's gonna go places. And we can't see that if that's for sure the case with this weapon, because they don't show us the portion of the weapon that shows what's charged and what's not. So I'm actually very curious to see more of the Charge Blade. I'm gonna keep my eye on this weapon. It's not my main by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think I could ever main Charge Blade, because there are some monsters in this game that I just feel like the Charge Blade has a terrible matchup against. And I just need to be fast, nimble, and mobile sometimes, which is why I very much value the dual blades. But this is a weapon that I keep my eye on. It's just a matter, right now it's a matter of, am I going to save the dual blades for the post game and when I go into when we get the expansion of this game, or am I gonna be using dual blades in the main story? That's the number one question. That's why Charge Blade is not quite number one, but it's in B tier because I just don't know if it's gonna be my weapon to fall back on, or if we're gonna go with dual blades. But I'm going to see more of this weapon. That's why it's not all the way up in A tier or S tier, because I just want to see more of the weapon. I want to see if they're leaning more into the Rise and Sunbreak aspect of the weapon, or into the World Iceborne of the weapon. That's gonna be the deciding factor for me. Light Bowgun. Man, this weapon was one that I wrote off from the second that I saw it, because the resource management aspect of the weapon is something that I don't really vibe with. I don't really like the fact that you can run out of ammunition in the middle and then you just have to go back to camp to restock all your items. But honestly, one of the veterans kind of put into perspective for me that that's more of a new hunter mentality. Back in the olden days, that was the strength of the weapon, that you had to make sure that you manage your resources and you had to balance between your heavy hitting ammos with the piercing ammos and the sticky ammos, that you knew that was a finite resource. So you had to pick your shots on when you want to use your unlimited ammo and your actual ammunition that can run out. And that's where the power of the weapon came from. That yes, it was powerful, but it was limited by the fact you couldn't spam it for the entire hunt. Now that we can go back to camp and restock indefinitely, That is why the weapons seem quote unquote overpowered, because the initial balancing factor of you not being able to restock at any point in the hunt is no longer a thing. That's why they seem so quote unquote resource management heavy. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you still have to manage those resources. Yes, I understand that you could not go back in the olden days, but once the hunt's over, you still have to restock for the next hunt. So I understand it to an extent, but that's just not something I want to really think of when I'm playing my Monster Hunter game. I just want to pick up my weapon and go to the field, you know? I don't really want to think about do I have enough ammunition, or do I need to go back and restock, or do I need to savage the land, or can I not go to the next hunt because I'm low on ammunition? That's just not something I really want to think about when I'm playing Monster Hunter. The weapon seems a lot of fun, and it's honestly because of the rapid fire energy aspect of the weapon now. It seems like it's more of how many shots can you land in succession, and it feels like it's rewarding you for landing your shots and not missing all the time, because now since you get like this new mode that allows you to in like this hyperdrive state, and that seems like a lot of fun to me. That seems like a fun playstyle, like land X amount of shots and you'll be rewarded with a temporary power up. That's kind of like dual blades in a sense, because well, we'll get to dual blades when we get to dual blades, but that's the same thing, that you're filling up a meter or even a charge blade, that the more hits you land, that's how you charge your sword and your shield. When you hit the monster in succession, you're able to charge your sword and then you're able to charge your shield, and you do more damage because of that for a limited amount of time. So it seems like a very fun playstyle to me, and it's really that one mechanic that really changed my perspective of these weapons. Everything else I just said previously, it still stands. That's still not a part of the weapon, that the resource management aspect of the weapon is not something I really vibe with. But if this is fun enough, and after you see it in practice and I see more of the hunts, it might be enough to sway me. I might just suck it up and deal with it if it's really gonna be this fun. But I just have to see more of it. But right now, it just left a very good impression for me. Insect Glaive users, where you at? I know I got some followers that are Insect Glaive users. I know I have people in my hunting group that are Insect Glaive users. If I have to say anything, I think Insect Glaive probably got one of the biggest buffs out of every weapon on this list. And I would be a fool to say that it didn't catch my interest as well, because there are so many things that it solves so many of my issues with the Insect Glaive. For one, you can actually see now where the extracts are coming from. You can see what monster part gives you what extracts. Like, I think it's when you're focusing on the head, you can see that the reticle glows red, saying that if you extract right here, you'll get red essence. That is just a huge quality of life that makes the weapon so much more manageable. Also, I'm not sure if this is specific to this specific kinsect, or maybe it's like a beginner kinsect, but it seems like this specific kinsect can hold 2 essences at a time, and that will help you get to getting your I'm not even sure what it's called, but when you have all your buffs, then when you have all 3 of the different buffs from the monster, you get like a power boost. That's gonna help you get to that so much quicker. Also, there's the fact that the kinsect basically has like a puppeteer effect, where the insect does the same moves as your hunter. That just, man. And let's not talk about the fact that you guys have picked up a profession in the adult industry, if you know what I mean. The Insect Glaive is looking real nice. And I've used Insect Glaive in Rise of Sunbreak. I've used Insect Glaive in 4 Ultimate. And man, does this look like this might just be the weapon. And then the only reason why it's at the bottom of A tier, and this could just be biased because I do have a hunter, is that sometimes in the hunting group, that it seems like there are times where we're lacking for damage, and I don't want to put them on the spot too much. And if that's not a fault of the weapon, don't flame them too hard. Like I said, we all have different play styles, and we're all trying to learn together. But I would be hard pressed to say that that didn't leave the best impression. That is more of the outside looking in though. And even when I use Insect Glaive sometimes, I am able to push it to do a little bit more damage, but sometimes it does leave me wanting a little more in terms of on the damage department. So also, I kind of want to compliment, if at all possible, being that I am a dual blades main, I am looking for heavy weapons to kind of complement my light play style. So that's why I feel like the Charge Blade was just such a perfect fit in World, that it was the big and meaty weapon to my light and flimsy dual blades. It's not going to be always the case, but if I'm going to use a light weapon, I want it to at least be doing consistent damage. I want to be able to be reliable. And because I've seen Insect Glaive firsthand in a hunt and seeing the highs and the lows, yeah, it left an impression on me. So I'll have to see more of it and see more of what it's capable of, but I do got my eye on it because it seems like this weapon has been reworked from the ground up. So I wouldn't be surprised if the damage has taken a shift on it as well. So for now, it's not a definite, but it's definitely a weapon I've gotten my eye on. It's hammer time, baby. While I've got a hammer, everything else is a nail. And man, does the hammer leave an impression. And let me tell you something about hammer. I feel like hammer, in Monster Hunter specifically, is the only iteration of the video game adaptation of the weapon that isn't just this slow, meaty, hulking weapon that just moves at 5 miles an hour. In this game, well, at least in World, I'm not sure about Rise and Sunbreak. I know it did a lot for the weapon in Rise and Sunbreak as well, but when you moved with a hammer, you were moving. And does this showcase that, yeah, if you want mobility, you got mobility. It kept the mobility from World and probably took some aspects from it as Rise as well, but that's always something that I've really loved about the hammer. And even in World, I never used it on screen, but off screen, I did dabble in the hammer a little bit. Not gonna lie, because it just seems so cool that you have the mobility. And I already told you that for me, the best defense is a good offense. And this seems like it's the best of both worlds. You have the mobility of a light weapon, and you have the power of the hammer. And it's simple enough to get into. There's not so much that I'm not fighting the weapon, I can focus on fighting the monster. So I kind of like the simplicity of the hammer. I like that it's not too complicated. I like that it still has the mobility and it has the power. So I'm not seeing too many reasons on why not to pick it up. So yeah, I'll just have to see more from the weapon, but I'll maybe have to just put my hands on it a little bit and get some first-hand experience. But we'll see in the demo. I think that demo, I'm gonna be experimenting with these weapons a lot, and I think that demo might be the decider. You'll see me use a lot of interesting weapons in this, but the hammer is looking pretty good. That's all I'll say. Leaning into the simplicity that I literally just talked about, the lance. And unironically, the fact that I just mentioned about the simplicity of the hammer is why I feel like lance is the most underused weapon in the game. And I know in Rise of Sunbreak that they tried to make the lance more flashy, whereas like the poke slap playstyle, as the lance users call it. It seemed like you guys felt like it was a deviation from the weapon, so it felt like they ended up pleasing no one. They tried to make the weapon more flashy in Rise of Sunbreak, still no one played the weapon, and the 5 people that did play the weapon hated it. So I feel like this is more of a return to form that's like, you know what? If we're only gonna have 5 people playing the weapon, let's make those 5 people really happy. And again, this kind of works in my favor because in this game, we'll get to dual blades. I promise. I'll stop alluding to it. But if I'm going to just hard focus on my main weapon, or if I'm gonna hard focus on Charge Blade, I want the second weapon to be one that I don't have to spend too much time learning. And the fact that lance seems just more simple, I kind of vibe with it. And it gives me that defense of that the dual blades do not have. The dual blades is more about evading, and it's more about like counter striking. But this weapon is more of just stand and deliver, and it gives you time to think about the monster, and you're not really fighting the weapon. But even so, I like the Captain America shield attack that you have on it. I like it seems like, I think that as Valor Dodge they were saying is back, but it seems like there are still things from the weapon that they are expounding on. It is more of a return to form, and I think to maybe a less trained eye, it seems like you're just blocking and poking. But to me, as long as I'm doing good damage, and as long as there's not too much to think about, I think the Lance might have a very good chance of being my secondary weapon. So we'll see how all that plays out. Now, here's an interesting one, because full disclaimer, the showcase did nothing for me for this weapon. So if the showcase didn't sway me, why is the Switch X so flippin' high, almost an S tier? And that's because this has been a long time coming. Let me tell you something, okay? The person that actually introduced me to Rise and Sunbreak actually used the Switch X. And at the time, the Charge Blade and Switch Axe were so similar to me in my head. Even some of my friends call the Switch Axe the Charge Axe because they just kind of, it's kind of like potato to them. That kind of was the case for me as well, until I was trying to describe the weapon to my friend because I didn't know the name Charge Blade. So I was trying to describe it to him. He was like, "Are you trying to describe the Switch Axe?" And I was like, yeah, the Switch Axe. And then I used the Switch Axe and I was like, no, this isn't the weapon that I was trying to describe. It's like, oh, you must mean the Charge Blade then. So between the person that mentored me for Rise and Sunbreak, he basically told me that, bro, if you can learn the Charge Blade, then the Switch Axe should just be an instant pickup for you next, because the Charge Blade is the harder weapon. The Switch Axe isn't, there's not so much to learn with the Switch Axe. But every time I use the Switch Axe, it just doesn't really mesh well with me, and I cannot tell you why that's the case. But I have heard very consistently throughout my hunting career, bro, if you're already using the Charge Blade, just pick up the Switch Axe. Just give it an honest shake and you won't be disappointed. I kind of attribute it to kind of like in Smash, if you play Marth, then there's no reason why you shouldn't play Lucina. That's kind of how I view the Switch Axe, the Charge Blade. And it also does check off the box that I said earlier, that I want a heavy weapon to match my light playstyle. So it does, and it has the added benefit that I put in all the groundwork in World and Iceborne to learn the Charge Blade, that it wouldn't take too much extra effort to learn the Switch Axe. And if I do end up going the Charge Blade route, and I don't want to use the dual blades till the very end of the game, that the Charge Blade and the Switch Axe have so good synergy, that they have so many overlapping skills that work so well with one another, that it wouldn't be too much overlap to build for different sets. It's like, I feel like building for something like the light bowgun and building for, if I'm building for the light bowgun and I'm using the Charge Blade, those two weapons have no synergy whatsoever. So I'd probably have to use suboptimal sets where there's some skills that do absolutely nothing for the Charge Blade, but it's there just to complement my light bowgun. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, this weapon showcase didn't really do it for me. Unironically, I feel like the weapon does have too much mobility, which is why it's so low for me. But because I just finished my Charge Blade adventure, I feel like the Switch Axe is just the next natural weapon for me to learn. So I'll keep my eye on it. I'll see what more it can showcase. If I just see something with this weapon in one of these showcases that'll push it over the edge for me, then I think the Switch Axe has a very real chance to be the weapon that I use for my adventure in the wilds. Let me tell you something, people. Gather weary travelers and let me play you a song of my people. Because starting off the S tier is the Hunting Horn. And here's something about me that might come as a shock. I do like playing support. I like being that person in the group that supports the team, and I am the glue of the foundation. But one thing about support that I really like playing is that I control the team. I'm in control. You have to answer to me because I get to decide who lives and who dies. If you're pissing me off in the hunt, I can just choose to leave you alone and just leave you to fend for yourself. I am the one you have to answer to, and I love that feeling of control. But that being said, I seriously do like, I actually do like providing buffs and being the helpful one, because in video games, you do win the video game by getting the boss's HP to 0, okay? Let's not forget that basic point. However, that being said, it's not as simple as just hitting the enemy until their HP hits 0. And the support is a very important role that no one wants to play. And the one reason why I've never picked up Hunting Horn is because it's that slow and bulky playstyle. But as I've been saying, I feel like the Hunting Horn could, now that we have 2 weapons with us, the Hunting Horn can be that weapon for me. It can be the slow and powerful weapon while also supporting my team, and I can still be fast offensive with my dual blades. I feel like the second weapon slot just opens up so much more flexibility. And I feel like it's not just me, but there'll be so many more people trying out new weapons now that they can use their main weapon at any point in time while also trying out something brand new. I think that's just a net positive for the series that I hope sticks around. The one thing that has me concerned and why it's at the bottom of S tier is because despite everything that I said, that it meshes me as a support player, that the world needs more Hunting Horn players in general, because I feel like if you're a Hunting Horn player, I feel like you don't have problems finding people to play with, right? I do kind of want to learn it, but the thing that's holding me back the most right now is that it seems like the animations seem to be pretty slow. So I'm not really so much sure, and I'm not sure if this is leaning more towards the Rise of Sunbreak or if it's going back to the World and Iceborne iteration of the weapon, because I heard that these are 2 very different weapons, that the Rise and Sunbreak version of the weapon is very different from every other iteration of the Hunting Horn in the series. So I'm not sure if this is a return to form or is going back to the Rise and Sunbreak iteration of the weapon, but this is one that is a very strong possibility because it checks so many personal boxes for me. And also, this is also why it's above the hammer, because I feel like the Hunting Horn in Rise of Sunbreak, at least, that there really wasn't reason to use the hammer, because the Hunting Horn just did KO damage, and it had all the things that the hammer can do while also providing buffs. So it was just hammer with more steps. So everything that I said about the hammer, I feel like also applies to the Hunting Horn. And that's why it's in the S tier, why hammer's in A tier. But yeah, I'm just gonna watch this weapon a little more closely, and maybe after getting my hands on it, seeing how it feels in combat, that'll be deciding if this is gonna be one of the weapons. But this is for sure a weapon I'm very heavily considering.
America, fuck yeah, coming again to save the motherfucking day. Yeah, America, fuck yeah, freedom is the only way. Yeah. Terrorists, your game is through, 'cause now you have to answer to America, fuck yeah.
What's a kilometer? Grilling for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. Land of the free and home of the brave. Yeah! No, but seriously, no. I always get confused on which of the bowguns that people consider to be the better of the 2. Sometimes I hear heavy bowgun, sometimes I hear light bowgun. I'm not too sure, but in the whole theme, you'll see a lot of heavy weapons in S tier. That's because of all the heavy weapons that I see, these are the ones that I feel like are gonna get the job done. Pretty much everything I said about the light bowgun still applies, but this is leaning more into the aspect that if I really do want to lean more into the dual blades or the charge blade, if I really just want to double down on what I've learned in Rise and Sunbreak and World and Iceborne and just hard focus on one of those 2, that this will be a secondary weapon. And I feel like if I want to do damage, if I want to go in and go hard, that the light bowgun, while it's cool that the more rapid strikes you get, then you can build up that special gauge and go into rapid fire mode and all that good stuff. But if I just want to do damage, and if I just want to blow something up, I got that strap on me. Don't make me pop the trunk, okay? Don't make me pop the trunk. That's what I feel like this weapon was really more about for me, is that I won't have to worry so much about the resource management of this weapon, because it still has the rapid fire, it still has the gauge function that I really want to engage with. I really want to see more about how that mode actually, with the ignition mode, I want to see how that really plays out in gameplay, because it's one thing to see in a gameplay trailer, but it's another thing to see in practice. And if this does just be my secondary weapon, that if I wanted to do insane damage, I'll have that option with me at every time while I'm using my dual blades and while I'm using my charge blade. So this is a route that I probably would only take. I don't see myself maining the bowguns in the game, just to be completely transparent. But if I were to pick one of the two, I'm going with the heavy bowgun, because even with a light bolt gun, it would more than likely be a secondary weapon. If anything, if I were just throwing something out, if I were to main the switch axe in this game, the light bolt gun would be a secondary weapon. But I would never go dual blades and light bolt gun. You know what you see what I'm saying here? You see what I'm trying to get at? So despite on anything, I think that the heavy bow gun, even if I do decide to go with hunting horn, for example, I think that I might just have the heavy bow gun in the background, you know? Now the bow, this is a weapon that I actually was considering. This is before I knew anything. When I was considering the weapons that I wanted to pick in this game, this and the number 1 slot were the 2 weapons that I considered from day one. When I was thinking, when the second that we slayed Fatalis, I already started thinking on what weapon I wanted to use in the next game. And this, along with the number 1 slot, these 2 weapons have nothing to do with what we've seen. These are the actual 2 weapons I was considering using for the next game. And the bow has extra meaning for me because I am an actual archer in real life. The very first time I picked up a bow and arrow, I hit nothing but bullseyes for the entire day. So this is more of like a passion pick for me, and I've really wanted to make the bow work, but for one reason or another, the bow just never felt right to me. I don't know, finding that critical distance for me and maintaining it never really felt that great to me. And yeah, I'm not really sure why it never really clicked with me when it clicks me so well in real life. I think that's just because that there are some things about that in video games that just don't translate to archery in real life. So that's why I haven't found that video game where archery has been portrayed perfectly. But here, I don't know, it seems like they're doing like some really good changes. I love the fact that they're actually making 1,000 Dragons actually worth a crap, because in Rise, not Rise, I don't think that was 1,000 Dragons in Rise, I don't know. But in Iceborne, that's a weapon that you pretty much would never see anyone use. And I love the fact that we have honing arrows now. So, and also the raining deaths from above. So, despite the fact that I was already picking this weapon, the showcase actually did amplify it. And I think this is like one of the only cases outside of number 1 where the weapon showcase actually amplified my enjoyment of the weapon. And it actually pushed me to want to use this weapon in a positive direction. It also has the added benefit that my Zenless Zero training wouldn't have gone to waste from the Longsword all the way down from earlier in the list, because the bow is a very nimble and agile weapon. And that was also another thing that I didn't really enjoy about the weapon, that I was not good at dodging and countering and parrying. But now, because of my Zenless Zone Zero training, I feel like I could continue that training with the bow and I could actually take it to the next level. So the bow is looking like a very, very, very solid contention. Not just with the heavy bow gun where it just be a secondary. No, I'm talking about I can see myself being a solo bow main. Even if I wasn't using a dual blade on the side or a charge blade, I can see myself just going solo bow for the entire game, which is a sentence that I never thought I would say. But it might be accompanied by the number 1, because there is only one weapon left, and if you've been paying attention, you can probably figure out who that number 1 slot is. Shields Up Iron Breakers. MURICA, I think it might have got me with this one, because, man, I think out of every weapon in this showcase, I think the Gunlance won by far, and it's not even close. There is one more we're going to talk about after this, and I think that they saved the dual blades for last, because, man, did they do some stuff to the dual blades? But I think that the Gunlance, even after seeing the dual blade showcase, I really think that Gunlance should have been second to last, because there is so much different about the weapon. It feels like this weapon was reinvented from the ground up. There is so much different about this weapon, and I know that there's different shellings. There's the long shelling, the wide shelling, and the normal shelling that you have to deal with, and all the different intricacies in the like shelling level 5, shelling level 7, and all that. It's not an easy weapon to pick up. And there's also the the low damage output allegations that the weapon has to deal with as well. But people call Gunlance the fun lance because it's just, no matter, even if you're doing no damage in the process, it's just a very fun weapon to navigate. And I doubt we're gonna have the flying feature that the weapon had in Rise and Sunbreak, but I feel like I let the allegations get to me in Rise and Sunbreak. I really wanted to pick up the Gunlance in Rise and Sunbreak because it just looked so much fun, blast dashing around the map and running faster than your Palamutes on your weapon. Blast dash just seemed like such a cool thing that I'm so sad that I mean, I guess I could always go back and just play it, but I feel like going back to Rise of Sunbreak to pick up a new weapon at this point is a moot point. But I think I want to make up for it by picking up the Gunlance. Well, the Gunlance is considered a life weapon somehow, but it has the shield aspect that I like of it. It has the guarding aspect. It has pretty much everything I like about the lance, but with the added bonus that it is a little bit more complex, that I probably would be learning the weapon more than fighting the monster. But I did it with Charge Blade, and it also, speaking of Charge Blade, Gunlance and Charge Blade have a lot of overlap skills. So just like how I talked about with the Switch Axe, that there are a lot of complementary skills that they work well with one another, that if I did go with a Charge Blade, I could just go Charge Blade and Gunlance, and that would be like almost perfect synergy. They both use artillery, they both use Rapid Morph, they both benefit from Evade Extender. There are just so many things that the Gunlance uses that the Charge Blade uses as well. They're like two peas in a pod. I feel like if I do this, that I'm gonna go Charge Blade no matter what, and the Dual Blades will just have to wait till the post game. But man, they did my babies justice. Talk about saving the best for last. Someone can correct me in the comment sections if I'm wrong here, but I think that Dual Blades is the only weapon showcase to trend on YouTube. And man, did they do some serious things to this weapon. This is my main, so this is actually a weapon that I can actually talk about the changes. For one, it looks like we're actually gonna have an incentive to use Archdemon mode, because if you guys don't know, there are two modes with the Dual Blades. The game plan that's intended is that you go into Demon mode, which basically burns your stamina gauge, and you build a meter up over time. And once that meter is filled, then you go into a mode that's called Archdemon mode, where you get brand new moves, new moveset and everything, but your weapons are kind of, I don't want to say as good as Demon mode, but it's kind of like a watered down Demon mode, because in Demon mode, you do significantly more damage than Archdemon mode, but it comes at the cost with not using your stamina. And I think that Capcom has caught on to the fact that literally no one uses Archdemon mode. It's more of that if you need to conserve your stamina for one reason or another, that you can fall back on your Archdemon mode. It's more like a backup generator more than your main source of damage. And if this is what it's looking like it is, the Archdemon mode might actually be the main draw of the weapon. Archdemon mode might actually be better than Demon mode, which is crazy to think about, because if it still doesn't require you to use stamina, the fact that our weapons won't be tied to stamina anymore, that is humongous for the weapon. Bow and the Dual Blades are the stamina goblins of Monster Hunter. And if we're no longer a stamina goblin, that might be massive. Also, the new moves, it seems like they fully honed into the Beyblade. Let me just say, Demon Flight is back. That was what was on everyone's mind, because doing the Attack on Titan move, I can never really consistently use it in World and Iceborne, but here, it kept it from Rise and Sunbreak. Rise and Sunbreak was the answer to the fact that it was always so hard to pull off the Attack on Titan move. And I am just everyone is happy that it's back. And it seems like they've just leaned into more of the Beyblade aspect of the weapon. You're just a human Beyblade now. You're just constantly spinning. We are quite literally spin to win now. And some people are saying that it looks like they might have timed inputs now, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, because if we did have what's the actual name of it? Everyone calls it Pierce the Heavens, the drill move that was in Rise and Sunbreak that everyone just seemed to spam. But so it's not, and to do that move, you had to specifically target a monster's weak spot. But if you knew where that monster's weak spot was, you could just kind of just spam that drill forever and just do insane amounts of damage. So it's not unusual that that dual blades have to be a little bit more precise. So time inputs don't really scare me too much. But I hope that, I do like that the weapon isn't going to be as mashy as it once was, because that's the main complaint. Even in Rise of Sunbreak, it feels like you just kind of do the Attack on Titan move and spam the drill, and you just kind of go on autopilot until the monster's dead. So I do like the fact that they're trying to make the weapon, I don't want to say complex, but they're making it less brain dead. They're making it less glue eater, to put it bluntly. So my baby's got a massive buff. I am super invested. I'm a dual blades main for life. They saved the best for last. And it really is just at this point, is it going to be the charge blade or the dual blades? Because there are some, like I said, I've said my piece on the charge blade, that the dual blades just had such a strong showing. And I just want to see more of it from the charge blade if that's going to be my main weapon. But we shall see. I will always be a dual blades main till the day I die. And man, did this make a showing. Even PlayStation made a tweet about it. And PlayStation hasn't tweeted about any of the other weapons. This is the only showcase that they tweeted about. So PlayStation has a clear favorite. I'm just saying, I think that dual blades might have won the whole show here. So I'm a proud dual blades main. I am very happy with the changes they made, and I'm looking forward to more. But with all that being said, we have gone through all 14 weapons, and I've given my thoughts on all of them. So this is the final tier list. This is what we're going to be rocking with. And right now, this is how I stand on all the weapons. So we will see which ones end up being the strongest. But just very quickly, just give my final thoughts. If I'm just going with my gut feeling, if I had to pick a weapon right now, you put a gun to my head, I really just want to lean into the dual blades, and I just want to push my dual blades as far as I can. I want to just main the dual blades and just learn the bow on the side. I feel like that's what my gut, that's what my heart says. Go as far as I can with the dual blades and have the bow on the side. That's the pairing I feel like I might end up going with, but there are just so many good options in this game. So that might not be my final selection, because the Gunlance looks super fun. I really want to learn the Gunlance. And I still also want to be the support for my team with the Hunting Horn. So, I don't know. All in all, I think that Capcom has done a very good job with all these showcases. And I am so happy to see that they're allowing content creators that they're inviting on to stream the game. So we'll be seeing a lot of gameplay coming out. And hopefully we'll be getting a demo sooner rather than later. But when that demo drops, you guys can bet your bottom dollar we will be on that demo. There will be gameplay of the demo on this channel. Bet on it. But we've been talking for a long time now. It's been almost an hour. Yeah. So I'm about to give me something to eat. I'm tired. My throat hurts. I'm about to get up out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Till then, deuces.